Pipe leading the engine. Not loose, missing, or damaged. Tight and secure with no missing nuts or bolts. It's not leaking, soot, or exhaust. Has no soot or rust buildup. My fuel tank, my straps, my gasket, my fuel cap with rubber seal, and my fuel line. Not loose, missing, or damaged. My fuel tank is not dented, not leaking. My straps are tight and secure with no missing nuts or bolts. Centered on the gaskets. The gaskets are not dry rotted or cracked. My fuel cap is tight and secure. My rubber seal inside is not dry rotted or cracked. My fuel lines are not frayed, not cracked, not leaking. My steps are tight and secure, not loose, missing, or damaged. It's tight and secure with no missing nuts or bolts, free of debris and objects. I'm looking for leaks and puddles. I'm going to remember head plus P. H is hydraulic fluid, E is engine oil, A is antifreeze, D is diesel fuel, and P is power steering fluid. Here I'm going to check my oil dipstick and my tube. Not loose, missing, or damaged. It's properly mounted to the engine. I'm going to check it by pulling out my dipstick. I'm going to wipe it off, put it back, pull it out, put it back, and make sure that it's at a safe operating range above the refill mark. It's not cracked or bent. My water pump is not loose, missing, or damaged. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. It's operating properly. It is gear driven, and it's mounted securely with no missing nuts or bolts. My water pump hose is not frayed, not cracked, not leaking. Clamps are tight and secure. Alternator is not loose, missing, or damaged, not cracked, bent, or broken. It's operating properly, mounted securely with no missing nuts or bolts. My electrical lines are not loose, missing, or damaged. Has no exposed wires. It's not frayed, it's not cracked, it's not chafed, it's not corroded, and it's not worn. Alternator fan belt, I'm going to push down in the center here to make sure there's no more than 3/4 inch of play, and it's not frayed and cracked. My coolant reservoir is not loose, missing, or damaged. It's tight and secure with no missing nuts or bolts. My fluid level is visible and has room inside for expansion. Do not remove cap while high. Go. Your thumb is covering it up. There we go. So now I have my air compressor. It's not loose, missing, or damaged. It's tight and secure with no missing nuts or bolts. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. It's operating properly, not leaking, gear driven. Air compressor hose, not frayed, not cracked, not leaking. Clamps are tight and secure. So I've anything connected is a hose. Now, power steering pump, power steering fluid reservoir. It's not loose, missing, or damaged. It's tight and secure to the frame with no missing nuts or bolts. Can be checked via the dipstick on top. It's operating properly, not leaking. Power steering hoses are not frayed, not cracked, not leaking. Clamps are tight and secure. There's 3 of them. I'm going to follow this one straight to my pump. My pump is not loose, missing, or damaged, cracked, bent, or broken. It's operating properly. It's not leaking. It is gear driven. Mounted securely with no missing nuts or bolts. Now I'm going to come up here to the frame of the truck and I'm going to walk it. At the same time, I'm going to check the frame of my trailer and my cross members. None are loose, missing, or damaged. None have any broken welds or illegal welds. None are cracked, bent, or broken. And none have any illegal holes or unmanufactured holes. Now I'm going to move over here. I have 4 bolts here that connect me to my spring mount. Leaf spring, U-bolts, shock absorber, and spring hinge. None are loose, missing, or damaged, cracked, bent, or broken. My spring mount is properly mounted with no missing nut to the frame with no missing nuts or bolts. Leaf spring is not misaligned or shifted and is the same on both sides. My U-bolts are tight and secure. My shock absorber is operating properly, not leaking. Mounted securely with no missing nuts or bolts. Rubber bushings are tight and secure. My spring hinge is fully greased. Steering shaft, U-joints, power steering gearbox, pitman arm, drag link, steering ring knuckle, spindle and steering arm, tie rod. None are loose, missing, or damaged. All are connected. U-joint is properly greased, free of debris. Power steering gearbox mounted securely with no missing nuts or bolts. Not loose, missing, or damaged. Cracked, bent, or broken. Operating properly, not leaking. Castle nuts and cotter pins are tight and secure. Brake chamber hose, slack adjuster, push rod, bracket, coupling, lining and drums. None are loose, missing, or damaged. Brake chambers not cracked, bent, or broken. Operating properly, not leaking. Mounted securely with to bracket with no missing nuts or bolts. Brake chamber hoses are not frayed, not cracked, not leaking. Coupling is tight and secure and not damaged. Slack adjuster has no more than 1 inch of play. If it does, it needs to be corrected by a certified mechanic. Push rod is not dented or bent. My lining is not worn dangerously thin. My drum is free of grease and debris with no illegal welds. My tire, I have my inside, outside, tread, bead, rim, lug nuts, and valve stem can all be is not loose, missing, or damaged. The side of the tire is not frayed, not cracked, has no bulges, no cuts, no spider webs, and can hold 95 to 105 pounds of pressure. My tread depth is going to be 430 seconds because I'm not allowed to have retreads and the tires must match. Bead is not leaking. My rim is not cracked or has any illegal welds. My lug nuts are all tight and secure with no rust trails or metal silver shavings indicating looseness. My valve stem is metal and pointed away from the rim. It's not loose, missing, or damaged. It is not dented and can be checked via the dipstick or via the air pressure gauge in the truck. Then I'm going to check my hub and sill. It is not loose, missing, or damaged, cracked, bent, or broken. It's fully greased, not leaking. I have my mirror, my brackets. So my mirror is not loose, missing, or damaged. It's clean, it's clear. My brackets are not loose, missing, or damaged, not broken, and are properly mounted with no missing nuts or bolts. I have my door. I'm going to open and close it. My hinges are properly greased. My weather seal is intact. ABC fire extinguisher, fully charged, needle on the green. Battery box steps, fuel tank steps, and catwalk can be checked the same as the steps on the other side. Fuel tank, straps, gasket, fuel cap with rubber seal, fuel lines can be checked the same as the fuel tank on the other side. Service, emergency, and electrical lines. I'm going to go ahead, and while I'm checking these, I'm going to go ahead and check the ones on the trailer. Underneath here. None are loose, missing, or damaged. My service and emergency line is not frayed, not cracked, not leaking. Secured to the couplings. The couplings are not damaged. My glad hands are not cracked, not damaged, not leaking, and are tight to the trailer. My glad hand seals are not dry rotted or cracked. My electrical cable is not frayed, not chafed, not spliced, not worn, has no exposed wire. wires and is connected to both the trailer and the truck. They're lifted off of the catwalk, not dangling. Now I'm going to move to my drive line. I have my drive shaft, U-joints, and locking tabs. And in between here is my coupling. None are loose, missing, or damaged. The drive shaft is not cracked, bent, or broken. U-joints and coupling is properly greased, free of debris. My locking tabs are in place with no missing nuts or bolts. My rear brake assembly, I have my brake chamber, my sock adjuster, my push rod, my bracket, my coupling, my brake chamber hoses, my lining, and my drums can all be explained the same as the front of the tractor. I have my spring mount, leaf spring, U-bolts, shock absorber can all be explained the same as the front of the tractor. The exception is back here I do not have a spring hinge. Instead I have an overload spring and an airbag. My overload spring is not loose, missing, or damaged. Not cracked, bent, or broken. It's tight and secure with no missing nuts or bolts. Rubber bushing inside is not dry rotted or cracked. My airbag is not loose, missing, or damaged. It's operating properly. Has no cuts, no cords, no gouges, no spider webs. It's not leaking. Operating properly, and is mounted securely to the frame of the tractor with no missing nuts or bolts. I have my tires, my inside, my outside, the tread, the bead, the rim, the lug nuts, we're going to touch them all again, and the valve stem can all be explained the same as the front of the tractor. The exception here, my tread depth changes from 430 seconds to 230 seconds because I am allowed to have retreads and my tires don't have to match. I have a bud rim. My bud rim is not grinding together. It's free of daylight and debris. Rear axle is not loose, missing, or damaged, cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are tight and secure. My gasket inside is not dry rotted or cracked. My mud flap is tight and secure with no missing nuts or bolts. I have my apron, my skid plate, my platform pivot pin, my release arm, locking jaw and kingpin is in between there. None are loose, missing, or damaged. My skid plate is angled down as to not hit trailer when coupling, is flush against the apron with no daylight in between it, properly greased. My release arm locks into position properly. If I have a sliding platform, it needs to be locked into place as such not to, while turning, not to hit the frame of the trailer or the fifth wheel assembly. My locking jaw is locked around my kingpin in between my skid plate, and my apron has no illegal welds, broken welds, or unmanufactured holes. The header board and the side of the trailer is not loose, missing, or damaged, and is strong enough to contain the weight of the cargo. I'm not missing any rivets or nuts and bolts. My reflective tape is red and white in color. Reflects light properly, is not damaged or ripped. My reflector is not loose, missing, or damaged. It's amber in color, clean, clear, not cracked, operating properly. My floorboard is not dry rotted, has no unmanufactured holes, and is strong enough to contain the weight of the cargo. I have my landing gear. Crank handle, when pushed in, is in high gear, which raises and lowers everything faster. Pulled out, it's in low gear, which raises and lowers everything slower. My landing leg is properly greased, not cracked, bent, or broken. My shoe has no broken welds or illegal welds and is clear from the roadway. My support frame is intact. trailer brake assembly, I have my brake chamber, my slack adjuster, my push rod, my brake chamber hoses, my bracket, my coupling, my lining, my drums. It can be explained the same as the rear of the tractor. Spring mount, leaf spring, and U-bolts can all be explained the same as the rear of the tractor. The exception is I do not have an overload spring, I do not have an airbag, I do not have a shock absorber, and I do not have a spring hinge. Instead, I have a torsion arm and a torsion bar. None are loose, missing, or damaged. Tight, cracked, bent, or broken. They're both tight and secure with no missing nuts or bolts. And the rubber bushings inside are not dry rotted or cracked. I have the inside, the outside, the tread, the bead, the rim, the lug nuts. Touch them all again. The valve stem and the rear axle can all be explained the same as the rear of the tractor. The exception is on here, I have a spacer instead of a bud rim. My spacer is free of debris, has no daylight. That's not a spacer, but the test truck does have a spacer. Mud flap can be explained the same as the rear of the tractor. My door panels, my door, locking latch, and my hinges. None are loose, missing, or damaged. My door is not missing any panels. It opens and closes properly. My latch locks into place and latches properly. My hinges are not missing any rivets. My reflective tape is red and white in color. Not loose, missing, or damaged. It's not cracked, it's not ripped, and it reflects light properly. I'll walk to the front and go ahead and do the lights. Which I'll end up cutting this part out of the video. Okay. Ready? Yep. My headlights are clean, clear, not cracked, operating properly, mounted securely. My indicator lights are amber in color, clean, not cracked, operating properly, mounted securely. My ID lights and my clearance lights are clean, amber in color, operating properly, not cracked, mounted securely. Side tractor indicator light is clean, amber in color, mounted securely, not cracked, operating properly. Tractor tail lights are red in color, clean, clear, operating properly, mounted securely, not cracked. Marker light, red in color, clean, not cracked, operating properly, mounted securely. Trailer tail lights, red in color, clean, clear, operating properly, mounted securely, not cracked. My 3 ID lights on rear of trailer are red in color, clean, clear, not cracked, operating properly. This time we're going to go ahead and turn on the left blinker. Operating properly. 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 This time I would like to ask for assistance. Would you please walk to the back and check my trailer lights and tail lights for me while I push in the brakes. This time I'd like to ask how much time I have left. And then I'm going to re-double check everything I did on the truck.
Thanks for watching. A like would be appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe.